Welcome to the Invested Teacher Podcast with Kyle Pierce, Matt Bigley, and John Orr.
Get ready to be taught as we share successes and failures encountered during our real life lessons, learning how to build generational wealth from the ground up.
Welcome, invested students, to another episode of the Invested Teacher Podcast.
Well, my friends, we are super excited to dig into this next episode of the podcast. We've got Matt back, but not for long because you're hitting the road, I believe, as soon as tomorrow. However, we were lucky enough to squeeze in this recording, and we wanted to start talking about something that, we're hearing from a lot of people, in particular from our audience on this show, where they're coming to us and they're sharing their goals for trying to, achieve financial freedom in order to sort of develop or generate momentum and moving in that direction. And we thought that this idea that we're going to be sharing here from a pretty famous author and speaker and a pretty famous model is one that can be really helpful for the audience here today. What is it that we're going to be unpacking for the group here, John?
Yeah. So from the book, From Good to Great, from Jim Collins, there's a metaphor that they use to talk about momentum in business and momentum in, it could be momentum in your life, but momentum in general. So it's called the flywheel model. And if you think about the flywheel model, the metaphor actually comes from, you imagine this giant, let's imagine like a huge wheel that's like heavy, like super heavy. It's maybe the horizontal is the way I want to look. I look at it, like almost like a turbine. It's like you need to get like a bunch of people to start pushing on it from one side just to budge it, right? It's like you got to budge this wheel, and then as the wheel starts turning, it's super slow all the way around. But then that after that first time around, it's a little bit easier to keep pushing, and then it gets a little bit faster and a little bit faster and a little bit faster. And it's like eventually this giant wheel, which was so hard to turn and get started, is turning almost on its own. And it keeps going faster and faster and faster because we're just even just a little nudge turns it even faster. So the idea is that it built so much momentum that it's hard to stop. And when we think about momentum, it's like, how can we create this momentum in our businesses? Or how do I create this momentum in my real estate portfolio? Or how do I create this momentum at my job? Or how do I create this momentum in our life? Like, how do I use a flywheel? Like, what are some of the things about this flywheel? How do I create a flywheel so that it might be really hard to get started, but once it gets started, it's like every key thing just pushes the next piece. So one of the things that that you need to identify to create a flywheel in your life is some key drivers of whatever you're trying to push. So if you're trying to push business, like, what are the key drivers in your business? If you're trying to push your real estate portfolio, it's like, what are the key things you need to do to get started, but also circle back to? And that just by focusing on the key drivers, you're automatically going to create momentum. And so, I'll give an example here. This is the first example I heard when I heard about the fly, which was like, think about Amazon for a sec. Like, everybody knows Amazon. So Amazon adopted the flywheel model when they created their business model. So if you think about Amazon, it's like they focused one of their key drivers on low prices. It's like, let's focus on trying to get low prices, because if we focus on low prices, then the next key driver that falls into is that will increase customer visits to our website. We're going to build traffic by focusing on low prices. But then if we increase traffic, that key driver is going to influence the next key driver, which is attracting third-party sellers and like bringing the marketplace, marketers to our website. Now, if we focus on that key driver, that's going to lead into us extending our products that we could put out into the world. This is like where I even thought like Amazon was a bookseller, and then it's like now it's just like this huge everything. You buy everything. It's because they focused on that key driver, which then allows them to focus on reducing costs, which then allows them to leave lower prices. And it's like now we're back to the beginning of the wheel, and then the wheel just keeps going. because now we're focusing on prices again, and then increases visits, and then third-party outsellers, and then, extended distribution, and then low cost. And that wheel just keeps going and going and going. And so Amazon has realized, hey, you just have to focus on these things and the wheel is going to explode. It's just going to take off. So like, that's the beginning, the idea of the flywheel. And I think, guys, we want to talk about like the flywheel in our lives and different examples of the flywheel and like how you even build your own flywheel today.
I'm curious, John. This is a cool concept. It's not one that I'm familiar with, but I've heard the book, haven't read it, and I'm following along as you kind of unpack this. I guess I wonder. So we've got this big model with Amazon. Like, what other experiences have you and Kyle had in either some of the other businesses you do, or personally speaking? Like, maybe make it a little bit more, micro for us, so we can relate.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. The Amazon example is a great one. There's actually, I would argue, like Amazon, you could potentially talk about multiple flywheels that they've used in the past, right? Because they, I've heard you describe one, John, about customer service being sort of the momentum that they were looking to sort of, work around. It wasn't necessarily low prices initially. It was about like just being the best, fastest, awesome service in this one really niche down area, which was books. And then after that, they started to kind of like almost like expand to another one. For us, we'll be open and honest here and say, like, if you actually think about things that you've had success with, I would argue that you could probably break it down in a similar fashion, because we actually didn't use this model in order to approach our math online business. It sort of just happened. So we sort of, we'll call it lucked out that we were doing this, and whether it was just one thing led to another, and we sort of just followed the pattern and kept going. The reality is that it's broken down really nicely. And actually, there's a great visual that was shared by, I think it's on ConvertKit's website. They have an article about the flywheel model, and the way they've broken down, they call it the creator flywheel, is ultimately what we did in the math space. John and I, having been math teachers and, spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to do it better, more out of selfish reasons, right? Like, we were just trying to figure out, like, how do we survive a 30-year career teaching a subject that most kids hate when they walk into the room, right? Like, it's not a fun place to be, right? You're like, you're selling something that they don't like. And ultimately, what you could break it down to, in where we got our success, was that the first part of this, this flywheel that begins this process is learning and practicing continuously. So we spent a ton of time reading the research, trying things, investigating, trying and failing, trying and reflecting, doing all of those things. And then we started to share some of what was happening, both successes and failures. So we started to share our voice, share our point of view, and then starting to kind of like almost like craft a bit of a storyline, right? Where people were invited into this journey with us. And as we did that, we created and published content consistently. So we started blogging. Like, this is when like blogging was I guess like the thing to do. So we would just almost like journal online publicly. And then the fourth part of this flywheel was, and this was really key, was we actively promoted it. So we would share it on social media. We would share it on Twitter. Specifically, Twitter was kind of the big one, but then it was Facebook, and sharing it on Instagram and on these different platforms. And then finally, after a really long time, it was like almost like, imagine, like John, you said, it's like you're pushing this wheel, and it's like really hard to get it going, and you're like doing it, and you're pushing and you're pushing and you're pushing. We make it all the way to the fifth stage, when we finally went, you know what? I think we might be able to actually like sell a product. Like, maybe we can sell a course in order to help other educators kind of repeat the process, but maybe do it faster, with less stress, with less hassle, all of those things, and hopefully more success. And once we did that, it was like that allowed us to then do the flywheel all over again, start from scratch and go back to the drawing board and go, what else is there to learn? What else is there to practice? How do I share it? How do I create more content that's going to help and actively promote it and create another course or another,
and it brings people to us.
And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, once this thing starts moving, it's like all the other pieces start coming in. We start to get those referrals. We start to get people knowing your name, recognizing your brand, talking about it with other people. And the flywheel just starts to go. And, you know, the key piece here is like, if you stop, right? In some businesses, you might be lucky and that flywheel might kind of do its thing. But I'm going to argue, like, if you completely stop and you let that momentum eventually start to slow down, you might find yourself back in that same spot where now you've got to start pushing again, this hard wheel to get it turning.
Right. And if you don't even, if you forget to focus on one of the key drivers, then it becomes hard to push the wheel, right? And it's going to slow down. Like you have to, that's why you want to identify what key drivers are critical to, that the success of the project or success of what you're after. So like at any point in that journey, Kyle, if we said, you know what, we weren't going to, hone our voice and our point of view, and we weren't going to think about our unique story very often, then, that would put it's almost like a dent in the wheel. And then all of a sudden it's really hard for us to create and publish, consistently. And then that would be hard for us to promote, like, the content. Like you got to keep the key drivers and strengthen the key drivers every step of the way. So it's not like I just have to identify these things, and by just knowing them is what it's just like, it's, that's kind of like one of our other episodes. It's like just knowing them is like 90% of the work. And then it's like that last 10% is like making sure, how do you strengthen these key things every time around the wheel so that it just keeps moving. So like, for example, like, like in the mortgage broker industry, it's like, what is the flywheel to keep that business, flowing? Is like thinking about, step one is probably the ultimate, which is like thinking about how do I give our clients the 5-star concierge customer service that they're entitled to when they're trying to find a mortgage or refinance, their home to pull equity from. And it's like, by focusing heavily on that key driver and giving them that 5-star experience, that allows the next key driver to start going, well, how do I help them refer that service to their friends, their family, their network? And then that key driver helps us go, okay, well, if we're getting referrals from those key people, now it's like, one of the things that we were doing is we are using those referrals to help our realtor partners earn more money, get more sales in their business, which then helps that key driver, refer more referrals back to us from those realtor partners. And then those realtor partners, those new clients coming from the realtor partners, we're giving them the 5-star experience. And then that cycle of just focusing on those 4 key things is what keeps that thing going stronger and stronger and stronger. And, our business is solely on referrals based off those key drivers. So that's lots of different, examples of the flywheel. But I think in general, it's like, what are the key drivers of the project, the idea that you're looking for, and how do you strengthen those?
I think it's so interesting. You guys built a business out of kind of a non-traditional entrepreneurial field, using this flywheel strategy. I think if we bring it to the field of real estate investing, we see with investors, there's a ton of people that just get stuck for long periods of time. And I wonder if we could identify maybe some of those most common sticky places for people, and have some strategies, some suggestions for how to get them, more into this momentum, into this flywheel, because that is probably one of the number one issues we see for people interested in investing. There's a ton of excitement to start with. And then they lose that momentum, they lose that excitement, almost immediately. And then spend the next number of years talking about how they wish they would have invested previously. So it's a very, very common challenge out there for real estate investors, aspiring or even experienced real estate investors as well.
Yeah, totally. And, you can kind of think about this, and, I'm thinking about the real estate piece because, you and I, Matt, when we were building this up, we were kind of like figuring it out as we went, just like most people do, right? Luckily we had each other. Both you and I are like big fact finders. So, we love digging and like love researching and learning about all those things, really key pieces. But ultimately, you can get as nuanced or as high level as you want. But basically it's like, hey, if we can figure out like where there's solid deals and what that means to be a solid deal, if we can get those under our belt, right? So if we can start pushing and going, okay, so we've got, a good deal, let's actually like do this work. Let's start building that recurring revenue. Like, let's start to feel some of that success build. Then we can start to actually increase how many deals we might be able to take. So like ultimately at first, you and I, when we first bought our first property, it was like in our minds going like, holy smokes, like we really just want the dust to settle, right? Like that felt really hard. It felt, it took us a long time and we had to like push that flywheel and we had to make it all the way around one time to kind of, and for me, I'm the type of person, like I really like to experience the whole thing so I can go like, okay, that's what that's like, right? And like, here's where we can do this better. Here's where that, I like that part. I hate this part. But ultimately, once you get all the way around, then you go, oh, like we can do that again. And then once you get another one in, that thing starts to turn a little bit more and that momentum starts to pick up. Now, the one part that I think we still struggle with, at least in our world right now, is that, we've struggled with finding good deals in our area. And we haven't necessarily dedicated enough time and effort outside of our area. And I think ultimately, I think
You're starting a new wheel.
We're starting.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Starting a new wheel. And it's like, do we want to push that wheel? I think is another big thing too. So this is kind of like a question, I think, for people listening, whether you're thinking about investing, whether you're thinking about your personal finances and just trying to get that flywheel going, because I would argue there's a flywheel there, right? Like, so if you feel like you don't have enough money at the end of every month, it's like, you got to start doing the hard work right now to push that flywheel and identify like, what can I change? What can we do here? What are the key drivers that are driving whether I have financial success that I'm looking for, putting myself in a better position each month, or I'm putting myself in a worse spot. And ultimately, at the end of the day, whatever that is, deciding whether you're willing to push that flywheel, I think is a really big piece, because what we're telling you is it's going to be hard at first. It's going to be seemingly hard. And it's also going to take a lot of time and effort and energy and thinking in order to get that flywheel around. But if you really want that flywheel to start moving, you can get there. So ultimately, it really comes down to us when we decide whether this wheel is worth pushing for ourselves. And if it is, am I willing to put in the time and effort? And if I'm not willing to put in the time and effort, then maybe it's not as important to me as I thought it was.
Yeah. You know what I love about when you think about your finances or real estate investing in the wheel is that I imagine that like, real estate investing is something you can always do. And it's like, you can keep the wheel spinning. It's like, that's the point of that game, and it makes me think of Simon Sinek's book, the Infinite Game. And the big idea I remember about the Infinite Game is that most people think like there's games are meant to be won. And Simon Sinek's idea is like, there's so many games that are actually just meant to be like, the game is meant to stay the game and like stay in the game. So it's like, there's an infinite game. The game, just keep playing the game is the point of the game. Like that's what that is. It's like almost like real estate investing is the same thing. It's like the wheel's momentum, once it gets going, it's like now the whole point of keeping the wheel turning is the point of real estate investing. It's like, we are going to build towards our financial futures. We're going to get, financially free, or we're building for our, next, our to leave to our loved ones when we're gone. It's like the whole point is to keep playing that game, because it's worth playing, and you might find it fun. It's like, I think any wheel that you're like, it's worth turning is going to be like that. It's going to be like, the whole point is to just keep turning that wheel. And if you can find that, it's almost like it's the secret of life. It's like, that's so important to kind of like keep that turning, keep playing that infinite game.
That's neat. My wife and I have been rereading Atomic Habits, again.
Right,
And,
right.
he talks about, it's not about the habits, it's about the identity. And it kind of makes me think of the same idea, just like you said with the Simon Sinek point. It's not about the end result of the game. It's about continuing to play the game. And I think that's a real mindset shift, for anyone, whatever they're trying to apply this to. So I really love that. And yeah, obviously it's about leveraging experience like you, Kyle, and I, for real estate investors, to know where to start, to know what those, fundamental activities should be and can be, so that you can even approach this stage of momentum without hitting too many roadblocks, along the way. You want to get to that place where you're confident, where you're flowing, where you're feeling positive, I think connecting with us and being able to talk about, our experiences in real estate investing and about how we can help others develop this flywheel for themselves in their own real estate investing journey, could be massive. You can save yourself an awful lot of time and effort.
For sure. And if you think about that wheel, I don't think we've stated what the wheel is for, for real estate investing, that can be like that keep turning, but it's like, if you focus, I know that you guys said that, finding good deals is tough. And that is that first entry point. Like that's when you get those good deals. But I think also once you find, like, I would bet it's easier for you to find deals now, even though it's still tough, than it was the first time you found a deal. And it's because it's like, once you buy your first solid deal, it leads into like strengthening your track record. Like all of a sudden it's like, I'm a real estate investor. I'm in the game. I'm playing this infinite game. And it's like, I've got like that under my belt, which then helps you, maybe it's adding to your bottom line. So you're adding to recurring revenue, and that was a good deal. You bought a cash flowing deal, or maybe you waited a few years and you pulled some equity out and now you're owning this property, with no money in the property. So it's like, you got that money. Now you've got like maybe some money here, whether it's cash flow or maybe it's a chunk of money, but now you're like maybe in a position to hire, a property manager or a team member, or all of a sudden it's like, I'm one step closer. I'm like, I'm going around my wheel, but then now I got a team member, or I've offloaded some of the work, which allows me to look at, okay, how do I find more deals? Right? Because I've now got more time to find more deals, or now I've got an opportunity to get leverage because I've got cash flow, right? So it's like, I've got this talent. Maybe that talent's going to help me find deals or give me more opportunities. I'm putting myself into places with deals because I've already been around the wheel part way, which then allows me to buy more deals. And then it strengthens my track record. And then I get more revenue. And then I can hire someone to like replace what I was doing over there, which gives me more, leverage, which could also flow with my deals better. So it's like that right there is like our real estate investing wheel, which kind of keeps that thing going. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense, John. I think, I've been sharing with some, new clients, or just in casual conversations lately, talking a little bit more about our real estate investing. And when I say we have, 31 units, like people just gasp, and it's almost like when you're in momentum, you don't even appreciate, that you are right, and that you're creating these opportunities and finding these opportunities. And so, so many of these people are stuck at trying to find maybe their first one, or having had conversations with me over the years about finding that first one, and we've just kept going and going and going and going. And it's only when you hear someone else's reaction to the portfolio we've created that you sort of go, wow, yeah, we really have been in momentum. And
yeah, awesome there, Matt. So let's think about wrapping up here, because I've got a big takeaway here I want to leave with the listeners. But before I share mine, what would you say from learning about the flywheel, thinking about the flywheel right now? Let's say you've had some time to think about the flywheel in the real estate world, agent world. What would be your, say, big takeaway right now about the flywheel model for folks?
I think for so many people, it's knowing where to start, like identifying what those activities are. And that's got to come through learning. It could come through experience, or you could shortcut that, and it could come through, leveraging someone else's expertise. And I'm really reflecting on this in real estate, because I know what my flywheel activities need to be in real estate. And so often I'm taken away from that, to focus on other things. So I'm in the process of trying to find more leverage now to be able to do that. So knowing what those activities are, knowing where to start, identifying what those activities are, And then I think just being really cognizant of where the hiccups might be, the roadblocks, the speed bumps that knock you off of your momentum, and being able to get back into momentum as quickly as possible happens so much
Right.
in real estate.
Right.
You know, I talk about it as being in momentum. You know, but
Right.
I'm going to start
Right.
to use this flywheel language. I really like it.
Love it. Love it. Kyle, what's your big takeaway?
You know what? For me, I think it's interesting because I think in life, anything that is going well, if you reflect on it, you can probably break it down to something that's repeatable in other aspects of your life. So, for me, even just when I see a strategy like this one or this model, and you think about it and you look at the different examples, you can probably pull all kinds of them in your own life. When you look at the things that you've had successes, those quick wins, or maybe those big wins in your life, you could probably break it down to this flywheel strategy, but you could probably also break it down to some other strategies that are out there. So for me, the more we learn, the more we think about these different models, these different structures, it just helps us to become more strong, more intentional about the work that we're doing in order to do it more effectively.
Love that. Love that. Yeah. I think my big takeaway, gentlemen, is, identifying, like, if you want to change any sort of momentum in your life, it's like, you can do this anywhere. So it's like, what are some of the big key drivers that create that momentum? Like those key moves that you can put emphasis on that cycle back on themselves. And if you can just keep strengthening those key drivers, 3, 4 key drivers, 5, maybe, then you're going to change your life. It's going to change your life in whatever area you apply the model in. And so that's my big takeaway, guys, because I think you can do this in so many aspects of our lives.
I love it. I love it. Hey, friends, listen, we appreciate you. We love doing this work, as you can tell, but, do us a massive solid. If you've listened to this point in the episode, I'm guessing you didn't hit the next button. So that means that you probably got something of value and there's probably something worth sharing. So do us a big favor, leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're accessing this content. It means the world to us, and it allows us to reach an even larger audience like you so that we can take this work that we're doing and share it with more people. We so appreciate you. So do us that solid and share away.
All links, resources, and transcripts from this episode can be found over on the website. That's investedteacher.com/episode 43. That's again, that is investedteacher.com/episode 43.
Don't forget, folks, we have a giveaway always running every month, and you can enter into that giveaway over at investedteacher.com/VIP club. Enter over there. That automatically enters you into the draw. And then every month we will let you know when the draw happens by email. And then you could win, a gift card. Sometimes we have really big prizes. Sometimes we have a $50 gift card of your choosing. But hey, VIP club, that's where it's at. investedteacher.com/VIP club.
Well, all right, my invested students, class dismissed. Just a reminder, this content is for informational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice.
Matt is a licensed realtor in the province of Ontario with Deerbrook Realty. John is a mortgage agent with BRX Mortgage, license number M23006803. Kyle is a licensed life and accident and sickness insurance agent with Corporate Advisors and Pan Financial Team.